Okay, so today let's dive into something that I think a lot of people think about these days, how to take back control of our digital lives. And we're going to take a deep dive into Spot-On Encryption Suite, which is open source software that's aiming to make secure communication easy for everyone.
Well, the great thing about Spot On is that it's not just like encrypting your email, it's trying to be like this all-in-one solution for everything. So secure messaging, file sharing, even web browsing. And it does it in a way that even your like not so techie friends could use.
Yeah, well, that's what I like to hear. But I mean, strong encryption and ease of use. Like, how does Spot-On do both? Let's start with maybe instant messaging. Everyone uses it, but it's not exactly known for being secure.
So Spot On actually uses a two-lock system, you could say. It's symmetric and asymmetric encryption. It's kind of like you want to send a secret message in a box. Symmetric encryption is where you and whoever you're sending it to have identical keys to open that box.
That makes sense, but then how do you share the key in the first place? I feel
Yeah.
like that's always been the weakest link.
Exactly. That's where asymmetric encryption comes in. So it's like having a public mailbox. Anyone can put a letter in, but only you have the key to open it up and read the message. So there's no risky exchange of keys. Spot On uses things like RSA and Elkamal for this.
Okay, that's pretty clever. So no more like awkwardly whispering passwords over the phone.
Right.
But what about the future? Quantum computers are always on the horizon. Could those crack these codes?
Yeah, so Spot On is actually ahead on that. It uses algorithms like McEliece, which is designed to be resistant to quantum computers. So it's like future-proofing your digital security.
Future proofing. I like that. Okay, so let's maybe shift gears a little bit to email. I know we've all sent emails and kind of wish they were as secure as like a sealed letter. Can Spot On actually pull that off?
That's the goal. So it works with your like normal email setup, your POP3, IMFP, but it just adds a huge layer of security on top of it. And it also offers peer-to-peer email. So your messages aren't sitting on some company server being vulnerable to, who knows what.
So it's like sending a letter directly to someone's mailbox instead of routing it through a giant sorting facility.
Exactly.
I like that. Direct delivery. But, okay, let's say I want to share something a bit more than a message, like let's say a confidential file, asking for a friend who may or may not have world domination plans.
Of course, hypothetically. So Spot On lets you create these things called magnet URI links. Think of it as like a secret handshake for file sharing. Only people with the link and the correct key can actually get the data.
So even if someone intercepts it, they're out of luck without that key.
Yeah,
It's like finding a treasure map, the treasure is buried somewhere else entirely.
you got it. And it's not just about keeping your communication private, it's also about like taking back control of your online experience. And Spot On has this thing, a decentralized encrypted URL database.
Okay, now break that down for me. What does that even mean? For someone who just wants to like browse the web and not feel like they're being watched?
Yeah, so it basically means you can search the web without your search history being tracked by all these giant companies. And you can even share your like indexed websites with friends, building kind of a trusted network of information.
Hold on, did we just solve internet privacy?
Getting there. Spot On also has a bunch of built-in tools so you can encrypt files directly on your computer. There's even this text-to-ciphertext converter. It's called Rosetta CryptoPad.
Okay, Rosetta CryptoPad. Now that sounds like something straight out of a spy movie. I have to admit, I'm very intrigued.
Hmm.
What would you use that for?
Let's say you need to send a secure message, but outside of Spot On, like maybe in a regular email or like a public forum where you don't want anyone snooping around. So you can just encrypt your message using Rosetta, and it turns it into total gibberish for anyone who doesn't have the key.
So it's like sending a secret message in plain sight.
Yeah, exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground here. Secure messaging, email, file sharing, even web browsing.
Mm.
What stands out to you as like particularly groundbreaking?
I think for me, it's the echo protocol. It's almost like imagine a network where messages are like whispers echoing through a crowd, but only the person they're intended for can actually hear and understand them.
Okay, now that is just cool. How does that even work?
So it's based on these things called echo accounts, which are like secure checkpoints on the network. And only trusted connections can pass through these checkpoints, which make sure that your messages are only going to the right people.
So it's not just about secure messages. It's like building an entire secure network of trust, like forming a secret society, but instead of like Handshakes, you're exchanging encryption keys.
You got it. And it gets even more wild when you consider something called adaptive echo. So these whispers actually learn to like navigate around obstacles in the network. So it's always finding the most secure and efficient way to reach the recipient.
Okay, that's some next level stuff.
Huh.
But what about those times when you do need to share a key securely? That always feels a little bit risky.
All right, so Spot-On has you covered there too. It has this feature called cryptographic calling. It's like making a phone call, but instead of voices, you're securely exchanging encryption keys.
So no more risky key exchanges, whispering passwords over the phone. Spot On really does have an answer for everything.
It really does try to. And to make things even more secure, it has something called Instant Perfect Forward Secrecy. That's IPFS.
Ooh, that sounds pretty intense. What exactly is IPFS?
So imagine constantly changing the lock on your treasure chest.
Okay.
That's essentially what IPFS is doing. It continuously renews your encryption keys, so even if someone got hold of a key from like a year ago, they wouldn't be able to decrypt any of your current conversations.
Okay, that is some serious security. But Spot On doesn't stop there, does it? Tell me about these fiasco keys I keep hearing about.
This is where things get really, really interesting. So fiasco keys, it's like having this whole keychain of constantly changing keys, which just makes the encryption exponentially harder to break.
Wow. Okay, Spot On's not messing around. They're thinking about not just like securing our present, but also safeguarding our digital future.
Yeah, exactly. But all this talk about advanced encryption, it begs the question, how do you know that Spot-On itself is trustworthy?
Right, that's the thing about all this security software. You're putting a lot of faith in the company, or at least in a piece of code. How does Spot On address that?
So that's where the open source magic comes in, which I think we should dig into after a quick break. So with open source, anyone can just look at the code, examine it, make sure there's no, funny business going on, no backdoors. It's like a public safety inspection, but for your encryption software.
So it's not about trusting a company, it's about trusting a whole community of developers who are all looking at this code and making sure it's legit. That's a whole different level of transparency.
Exactly. And because anyone can see it, it makes it way harder for bad actors to hide anything dodgy or, exploit weaknesses. Security through transparency.
I'm starting to see why this whole open source thing is such a big deal in the security world. It's like the difference between trusting a whispered secret and having it publicly notarized or something.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And Spot-On takes that whole open source idea really seriously. It's not even just about the features themselves, it's about making this whole ecosystem of secure communication tools. Remember that whole whisper echoing through a crowd thing?
Yeah.
Well, Spot-On lets you set up these decentralized servers so those whispers aren't all relying on one central hub.
Okay, now decentralized servers. Help me wrap my head around that one. Why would I even need my own server for this?
Okay, so think of it this way. Right now, you use something like, let's say, WhatsApp or Signal. You're basically trusting their servers to handle your messages, right?
Right.
With Spot-On, you can cut out the middleman entirely. Create your own secure communication hub. It's like having your own personal phone line, but for the internet.
So instead of relying on, a tech giant, I could host a server for my family, my book club, maybe even my top secret world domination planning committee.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's not even that hard to set up. Spot-On has a bunch of different options from user-friendly graphical interfaces to, if you're more comfortable with it, minimalist command line tools.
So no matter your tech skills, there's a way to create your own secure communication fortress. I like it. But what about actually finding and connecting with people on this decentralized network? It seems like it could get a little chaotic, right?
That's where those magnet URI links really come in handy. They basically act like invitations to specific servers and channels. So it's really easy to join group chats or share files, but only within your trusted network.
Ah, so it's like sending out invitations to your secure communication party. You control the guest list. Everyone has the SQL handshake to get in.
Exactly. And to make exchanging keys even smoother, Spot-On has this thing called Echo Public Key Sharing, or EPKS. So it's like sending out a beacon signal, but through those secure Echo accounts we talked about. It helps your trusted contacts find and connect with you easily.
So instead of fumbling around these long encryption keys, Spot-On just streamlines everything and keeps it secure.
Exactly. And if you want even more protection for your public key, there's a feature called RepeatLEO, where you can actually encrypt your public key using a friend's public key.
So it's like putting your secret message inside another envelope, which is only addressed to someone who already has the key to that envelope.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to think Spot-On security measures are bordering on, paranoia. But hey, Maybe a little paranoia is a good thing in this day and age.
Yeah, right. It's not even really paranoia. It's about like giving people the tools to actually have control over their digital lives. And that includes how they communicate in groups. Spot On has like really strong encrypted group chat capabilities built in, all based on that same decentralization end-to-end encryption.
So no more worrying about your group chat being hosted on some company's server, vulnerable to who knows what. What are the options there for setting those up?
So you can actually layer Spot-On's encryption on top of like existing chat services. So something like Internet Relay Chat, IRC, it makes it way more secure. Or you can go fully decentralized and create your own separate group chat server.
Okay, so we got options. We can either like reinforce what's familiar or build our own independent thing. I like that. It's empowering. But this is all sounding pretty computer focused. What about us mobile users out here? Are we stuck with insecure messaging apps?
No, not at all. Spot On has you covered. They have this companion app for mobile. It's called Smoke. Think of it as like a wisp of secure communication always there in your pocket.
I like it. So Smoke is basically spot on, but pocket-sized. Does it have all the same features?
It's definitely more for like mobile use, so it has a more streamlined interface,
Yeah.
but it's still got all the good stuff. You've got your Echo protocol, your multi-layered encryption. It even takes things a step further with a feature called Fire Chat.
Fire chat. Okay, now you're just showing off. What does that do? Summon secure messages out of thin air.
So it's actually designed for when your internet connection might be a little spotty. Or, if you have no internet access at all, Fire Chat lets your messages basically hop between devices, creating a mesh network that can even bypass traditional internet infrastructure.
Hold on. So even if I'm somewhere with like limited internet or even no internet, I can still have a secure conversation using my phone?
Exactly. It's a game changer, especially for like activists, journalists, or anyone who needs to communicate securely in maybe a more difficult environment.
This is incredible. Okay, we've talked a lot about what Spot On can do,
Yeah.
but I'm curious about the technical nitty-gritty. What makes the server setup so unique?
One of the cool things is how flexible it is. So Spot On lets you set up a server in a bunch of different ways. It caters to different levels of expertise. So you can use like a simple graphical interface, something more hands-on like a command line tool. You can even experiment with other networking utilities like NCAT.
NCAT, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, so it's a pretty versatile networking tool. You can use it to set up simple PCP and UDP servers. And with a bit of configuration, you can actually make a basic Spot-On server using NCAT. It gives you even more control over the whole setup.
So for those who really want to tinker and customize their setup, Spot On has options galore. But let's zoom out for a second. We've been deep in the weeds of features here, but I want to understand why this even matters for the average person.
Well, imagine a world where secure communication is just the default. It's not some special thing, where you have the power to choose how you communicate, who you talk to, without worrying about some big company listening in or, censoring what you're saying. That's the potential here.
That's a powerful vision. But realistically, how do we get there? Right now, it feels like these tools, they're mostly known within tech circles.
Right.
How do we make this the norm for everyone, not just the tech savvy?
That is the million-dollar question. It's going to take raising awareness, designing things to be more user-friendly, maybe even some policy changes to encourage secure communication.
So it's not just a tech challenge, it's a social and a political one too.
Uh-huh.
It's about changing how we think about all of this and realizing that online privacy, online security, those are fundamental rights, not just optional extras.
Exactly. And as more people start to see that it's important to secure their digital lives, I think we're going to see way more demand for tools like Spot On.
For sure. Okay. You've convinced me. Spot On's clearly a lot more than just an encryption suite. It's like a glimpse into a different way of doing things online where people have genuine control over their digital lives.
It really is. It just shows you what open source development can do and how important it is that everyone has access to tools that let them communicate securely and privately.
Absolutely. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, are there any other tools or resources you would recommend for someone who wants to explore this world of secure communication a bit more? What about for web browsing specifically? Are there any browsers out there that designed with privacy in mind that work well with Spot On?
Yeah, definitely. One that comes to mind is called Dooble. It's a web browser that's really built with privacy as like the top priority.
Dual. I think I've heard like whispers of this browser in the darkest corners of the internet, but I never actually tried it myself. What makes it so special?
Well, for one thing, it has this really unique way of handling website revisions. So it actually keeps track of all the different versions of websites you visit, creating this kind of historical record of web content. Imagine being able to rewind the internet, seeing what websites look like weeks, months, even years ago.
Wow, okay. That's incredible. Talk about a historian's dream.
Hmm.
But beyond the cool factor, how does it work with Spot On?
So one way is through Spot-On's URL database. Remember how we were talking about making that like private, community-driven web index? Dable makes it super easy to contribute to that by letting you quickly save and share URLs that you think are valuable.
So I could use Duble to like curate my own little corner of the web and then share those curated links with my trusted network on Spot On. That's like creating a whole secure, privacy-focused alternative to these big social media platforms.
You got it. And that's just scratching the surface. Dooble has a ton of other cool features that make it amazing for privacy, but we'll save those for another deep dive.
Okay, deal. You've officially piqued my curiosity. I'm adding Explore Duble to my to-do list right now. But for now, let's bring it back to Spot On's like core mission here, giving individuals the tools they need for secure communication. So Spot On, it seems to be pushing the boundaries of what we can do with secure communication. But what does all of this mean in the grand scheme of things? Could tools like this actually shift the balance of power online a little bit?
That's the question, right? We've been trusting these big companies with our digital lives for so long, kind of just hoping that they'll keep everything safe, keep our conversations private. But it feels like we constantly have to compromise our privacy just to use the internet these days. Spot On feels like a different way forward.
Yeah, it's like instead of being like a passive user on someone else's platform, you become like an active participant. You're building a more secure internet from the ground up, which is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where things get really interesting. Imagine online identity isn't controlled by these big tech companies. Imagine it's controlled by us, by individuals, with really strong encryption as like the foundation of it all. Then we could start moving towards this more decentralized identity model, like self-sovereign identity.
Okay, now hold on. Self-sovereign identity, I've heard that thrown around, but paint that picture for me. What does that actually look like in real life?
Okay, so imagine having complete control over all of your data, your information. Instead of relying on Facebook or Google to verify who you are, you have your own secure digital vault where you keep all of that. And of course, it's all protected by spot-on encryption, naturally. So you choose exactly what information you share, who you share it with, all of it.
It's like instead of a driver's license or a passport, you have a digital version that you own.
Yeah.
That's definitely a future I could get behind. But let's be real for a second. For most people, talking about encryption, it can feel really intimidating. Like it's this complex thing they don't understand.
Oh, for sure. And that's why these conversations that we're having, they're so important. We have to like break it down for people, make these ideas accessible to everyone, because at the end of the day, secure communication, it's not just about protecting secrets, right? It's about protecting our freedoms.
It's about being able to say what you want, talk to who you want, without worrying about being censored or having someone listen in. It's about protecting our future.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a future worth fighting for.
Couldn't agree more. I think we've given everyone listening a lot to think about today.
Spot on. It's definitely more than just a set of tools. It feels like we've gotten a glimpse into a very different future online. A future where privacy and security are just built in. They're not something you have to think about.
Yeah, and it just goes to show what the open source community can do when they put their minds to it. Everyone deserves to have a more secure experience online, and this feels like a huge step in that direction.
If you're ready to take back a little control of your digital life, I highly recommend checking out Spot On. It might just change how you think about the internet. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.